It's a Saturday morning and you're sitting on the couch scrolling through your phone. You open the news and the first thing you see is the United States just launched airstrikes on Iran. You swipe down. Inflation data came in hot again. You swipe again. The stock market just had its worst week in months. You put the phone down, stare at the ceiling, and think the thing millions of Americans are thinking right now, but nobody wants to say out loud. Something about this year feels deeply, fundamentally wrong. And look, I get it. Every year someone says, this is the year everything falls apart, and most of the time it doesn't. Most of the time it's noise. But 2026 is different. Not because of one thing, but because of the sheer number of things happening at the exact same time. My name is Finn, and I think about money probably more than I should. But this week I couldn't stop. Because when you line up all the data points that are flashing red right now, the picture they paint is not something you can scroll past. If you're the kind of person who actually wants to understand how money works instead of just guessing, hit subscribe and drop a like on this video. It helps more than you'd think. Here's what most people are doing right now. They're looking at each headline in isolation. Iran? That's a foreign policy thing. Inflation? That's a Fed thing. The stock market? That's a Wall Street thing. But here's what nobody's telling you. These aren't separate problems. They're dominoes. And when you understand how they connect, you start to see why 2026 might be the most financially dangerous year for the average American in over a decade. And that $1,500 number I'm going to show you in a minute, it's actually the optimistic estimate. Let me set the stage for you because the context here matters. Go pull up your bank statement from February 2024, exactly 2 years ago. Look at what you spent on groceries. Now look at this month. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, consumer prices are 26% higher than they were in December 2019, not 26% over 10 years. Over 5, your dollar from 2019 is now worth about 74 cents. And you felt that, maybe not as a number, but as a feeling. That moment at the self-checkout when the total flashes and you think, wait, that can't be right. Car insurance premiums are up over 20% year over year. The average rent for a one-bedroom apartment in the US is hovering around $1,500 a month. Childcare costs more than in-state college tuition in most states. And all of this was before the news that hit this week. Now, you'd think Wall Street would be sounding the alarm. But here's the thing. For 3 straight years, the stock market went up like nothing was wrong. 2023, S&P 500 up 24%, 2024 up 25%, 2025 up 16%. Everyone felt rich on paper, but 2026, the S&P is in the red. The Magnificent 7 stocks, the ones that carried the entire market, their combined ETF is down roughly 6% this year. Microsoft is down nearly 18%. And this week, Nvidia reported earnings that beat expectations on literally every metric and the stock still dropped 5%. When even Wall Street stops buying the good news, that's not a dip. That's a mood shift. And most people have no idea what's behind it. Let's start with the thing that affects every single person watching this: inflation. On February 27th, the Bureau of Labor Statistics released the Producer Price Index for January. This is the number that measures what businesses pay for goods before they pass those costs on to you. The headline number came in at 0.5% month over month. The consensus, what every economist expected, was 0.3%. And the core number, which strips out food and energy, it came in at 0.8%. The consensus was also 0.3%. Let me put that in perspective. Core PPI didn't just miss the target. It came in at nearly triple what was expected. That's not a rounding error. That's a flashing red light on the dashboard. Here's what that actually looks like in real life. It's your grocery bill being $47 more than last month, and you can't figure out why. It's your car insurance renewal coming in 22% higher than last year. It's that moment at the gas station when you watch the numbers spin past $50, then $60, then $70, and you realize filling your tank now costs what a nice dinner used to. The Federal Reserve has been saying inflation is under control. They cut rates 3 times at the end of 2025, September, November, December. Everyone celebrated. But now the January data is saying, not so fast. Schwab's head of fixed income research said it plainly. Inflation is in the driver's seat when it comes to monetary policy. That means rate cuts? Probably not happening in March, maybe not even in June. And that matters because high interest rates don't just affect mortgages and car loans. They affect everything. The average credit card APR right now is around 21%. If you're carrying a balance, and 47% of Americans are, that interest is compounding against you every single day. It's like trying to run up a down escalator. You're exhausting yourself just to stay in place. Now here's the part most people skip over. While everyone was focused on the Supreme Court striking down Trump's IEEPA tariffs in February, the administration quietly invoked Section 122, a rarely used provision of the 1974 Trade Act, and slapped a 10% tariff on virtually all imports, then threatened to raise it to 15%. According to the Tax Foundation, these tariffs amount to an average tax increase of $1,500 per American household in 2026. That's not a projection, that's their estimate based on current policy. The Yale Budget Lab puts it slightly lower at around $800 per household after the IEEPA tariffs were removed, but that number jumps back up with the new Section 122 tariffs. And this is where it gets wild. A study from the Federal Reserve Bank of New York, not some think tank, not some political outlet, the actual New York Fed, found that Americans paid for nearly 90% of the tariff costs in 2025. 90%. The foreign countries that were supposedly going to pay, they absorbed less than 10%. Think about what that means for someone making $55,000 a year. After federal and state taxes, you're taking home maybe $42,000. Rent or mortgage eats up $18,000. Food, utilities, transportation, another $15,000. You're left with maybe $9,000 for everything else. And now, $500 of that just disappeared into tariffs you probably didn't even know existed. The Kiel Institute for the World Economy called it America's own goal. And when you look at the data by product category, it gets worse. Yale Budget Lab estimates that consumer electronics will see prices rise 18% in the short run. Apparel and leather, up 21%. Motor vehicles, up about 12%. Which translates to roughly $6,200 more on the price of an average new car. If you're still here, you're already ahead of 90% of people who clicked on this video. Hit that like button. It tells the algorithm to show this to more people who need to see it. Now, when people can't afford things but still need them, what do? They put it on a credit card. And that brings us to what might be the most alarming number of 2026. Americans now owe $277 trillion in credit card debt. That's trillion with a T. That's the highest balance since the New York Fed started tracking this data in 1999. It's up 66% since 2021. The average cardholder with a balance owes about $6,523, and they're paying roughly 21% interest on it. Let me show you why this number is so important. If you owe $6,523 at 21% APR and only make minimum payments, it'll take you over 7 years to pay it off, and you'll pay nearly $18,500 in total, almost 3 times what you originally owed. That's not a loan. That's a trap. It's a bucket with a hole in the bottom, and no matter how fast you pour money in, it drains faster than you can fill it, and the data gets darker. A bank rate survey from this month found that 56% of Americans now have more credit card debt than emergency savings. More debt than savings. 17% have no emergency savings at all. And here's the number that keeps me up at night. 22% of people with credit card debt say they don't think they'll ever pay it off. Not, it'll take a long time. They think they will never be free of it. Here's what that actually looks like in real life. It's a 34-year-old woman in Ohio who makes $52,000 a year, has $11,000 in credit card debt across 3 cards, and every month she pays $380 in minimums just to keep her head above water. That $380 doesn't even cover the interest. Her balance went up last month. It'll go up again this month. And she knows it. She does the math every night before bed, and the math never changes. Okay, but here's what nobody's telling you. As of today, February 28, 2026, the United States and Israel have launched what President Trump called major combat operations against Iran. Multiple ministries in Tehran were targeted. Iran has already retaliated, launching missiles across the region. Dubai, one of the safest, most glamorous cities in the world, was hit by falling debris. The UAE closed its airspace. Hundreds of flights cancelled. Now, I'm not going to pretend to be a foreign policy expert, but I can tell you exactly what this means for your wallet. Iran produces about 3.1 million barrels of oil per day. More importantly, the Strait of Hormuz, the narrow waterway between Iran and Oman, handles roughly 20% of the world's daily oil consumption. 20%. Every single day, 13 million barrels of crude oil pass through that strait. Saudi Arabia, Iraq, the UAE, Kuwait, they all ship their oil through Hormuz. Oil closed at $72.87 a barrel on Friday, already up nearly 3% on war fears alone. Analysts at Lombard Odier estimate that if Iran disrupts the Strait of Hormuz, oil could temporarily spike to $100 per barrel or higher. The Center for Strategic and International Studies projects that gas prices could jump well above $3.50 per gallon, and if this escalates into a prolonged conflict, we're looking at 4+. Let me put that in perspective. The average American drives about 13,500 miles a year. At 25 miles per gallon, that's 540 gallons. At $3 a gallon, you're spending $1,620 a year on gas. At $4 a gallon, $2,060. That's an extra $540 a year, on top of the $1,500 in tariff costs, on top of the 21% credit card interest, on top of the inflation that's already eating your paycheck alive. Now here's what I want to be honest about. There's a real chance this specific conflict de-escalates within days. Last June, Israel struck Iranian nuclear sites and markets panicked at the open, then recovered within a week once it was clear the Strait of Hormuz stayed open. That could happen again. But even if it does, the pattern it reveals is the real concern. Our economy is one geopolitical shock away from a price spike that millions of Americans simply cannot absorb. The buffer is gone, the savings account is empty, the credit card is maxed, and the next crisis doesn't care if this one resolves quickly. And all of this, the inflation, the tariffs, the debt, the war, is landing in a year where the stock market is already statistically primed for exactly the kind of drop that wipes out everything people think they've built. 2026 is a midterm election year, and here's something most people don't know. Since 1957, the S&P 500 has entered a correction, a decline of 10% or more, in 12 out of 17 midterm election years. That's a 70% hit rate. The average drawdown during midterm years is 17.5%. In midterm years where a new president is in office, the median drawdown is 21%. Now, add war, add tariffs, add hot inflation, add the AI trade falling apart, add record credit card debt, and that historical pattern starts to look less like a coincidence and more like a warning. Kalshi, the prediction market platform, currently prices the probability of an S&P 500 correction at 58%. A 39% probability it drops 15% or more. And those numbers were calculated before Iran. Here's what that actually looks like in real life. It's opening your Fidelity app and seeing your 401k down $14,000 in 8 weeks. It's watching your retirement date move from 62 to 65 to, I honestly don't know anymore. It's that knot in your stomach when a coworker says, "Did you see what the market did today?" and you're too scared to check. It's doing the math at 1 a.m., realizing you've lost more in your portfolio this month than you earned at your job and wondering if the whole thing was a mistake. It wasn't, but I need you to understand why, because this next part changes everything. So what do you actually do with all this information? Because knowing that things are bad is useless if you don't know how to move. I've been crunching these numbers so you don't have to. Here's the framework. and I'm going to give you the actual math on each one, not just vague advice. Step 1. Build a $2,000 cash buffer in the next 90 days. Not $10,000, not 6 months of expenses, just $2,000. Here's why that specific number matters. According to the Federal Reserve's own survey of household economics, 37% of Americans can't cover an unexpected $400 expense without borrowing. $400, a car repair, a medical copay, a broken phone. When that $400 emergency hits and you don't have cash, it goes on a credit card at 21% APR. Then it's not $400 anymore. It's $400 plus $84 a year in interest, compounding. Now put that $2,000 into a high-yield savings account paying 4.5%, and many of them are paying that right now. That earns you $90 a year for doing absolutely nothing. Compare that to $2,000 sitting on a credit card at 21%, which costs you $420 a year. The spread between having cash and having debt on the same amount is $510 a year. That's the real math of an emergency fund. How to get there? $22 a day for 90 days. That's skipping one DoorDash order, one less coffee and pastry combo. I know that sounds annoyingly simple, but $22 a day is $2,000 in 3 months. Set up an automatic transfer and don't touch it. Step 2. Make one phone call that saves you thousands. Here's a move that almost nobody does because nobody tells them it works. Call your credit card company and ask for a lower rate. According to a LendingTree survey, 76% of cardholders who asked for a lower APR got one. 76%. The average reduction was about 5 percentage points. On a $6,500 balance, that's $325 less in interest per year from a 10-minute phone call. If you're carrying more than $4,000 across multiple cards, look into a balance transfer card with a 0% introductory rate for 12 to 15 months. Move your balance over. Pay it down aggressively during the 0% window. On $6,500 at 21%, you're paying roughly $1,365 in interest per year. During a 0% balance transfer period, zero. That's $1,365 back in your pocket to actually attack the principal. Step 3. Don't sell your investments, buy the fear. I know this sounds insane when the news is showing missiles landing in Tehran, but let me give you the historical math. In every single midterm election year since 1957, the S&P 500 was higher 12 months after the election. Every single one. The average return in the 12 months following a midterm, roughly 32%. And the shares you buy during the drawdown, those panicked months between now and November, those are the ones that generate the biggest returns when the recovery comes. If you're contributing to a 401k or index fund, do not stop. If anything, this is the year to increase your contribution, even by 1%. At $60,000 salary, bumping your 401k from 6% to 7% is an extra $50 a month. That $50 a month, invested during a market dip and compounded at 8% for 25 years, turns into roughly $47,000 from $50. Step 4. Play defense on big purchases. The tariff cheat code. This is the tip that nobody's talking about yet. Tariffs have added roughly $6,200 to the average price of a new car, 18% to consumer electronics, and 21% to apparel. But here's the thing, used markets haven't fully absorbed these premiums yet. A 2023 model year car with 25,000 miles is functionally identical to a new one, but dodges most of the tariff markup. Same with refurbished electronics and clothing from domestic brands or second-hand platforms. If you must buy new, do it before the Section 122 tariffs potentially increase. They're capped at 15% for 150 days, meaning the window could shift by midsummer. Time your big purchases. And here's one more angle. Mortgage rates just dropped below 6% for the first time in over 3 years. If you're a homeowner with a rate above 6.5%, refinancing right now could save you $200, $400 per month depending on your loan size. That's not a small number. That's car payment money suddenly freed up. Step 5. The $500 math that changes your retirement. I saved this for last because it's the most powerful and the least sexy. If you can find a way to earn an extra $500 a month, side gig, freelancing, overtime, selling things, collecting dust in your garage, here's what that actually does. $500 a month invested at a historical average of 8% for 20 years turns into $296,000. For 25 years, $475,000. For 30 years, $745,000. That's not fantasy. That's the S&P 500 average since 1957. The person who finds $500 a month at 30 retires a millionaire. The person who doesn't is still working at 67, wondering what happened. Before we get to the best part, if this is making sense so far, subscribe. What comes next is even more important. I want to leave you with two versions of someone watching this video right now. Let's call her Sarah. She's 31. She makes $58,000 a year. She's got $4,200 in credit card debt, $800 in savings, and a 2019 Honda Civic with 87,000 miles on it. Version 1. Sarah watches the news about Iran tonight, feels anxious, scrolls TikTok for 2 hours to numb the feeling, and goes to bed without changing anything. Over the next 6 months, gas prices creep up to $380. Her grocery bill rises another 8%. Her credit card balance grows to $5,600 because she needed new tires and her copay went up. She still has $800 in savings, actually $640 now because she dipped into it twice. By December, she's more stressed than she's ever been about money and she's no closer to any of her goals. The compound interest on her debt added $680 this year. The compound interest on her savings added $28. Version 2. Sarah watches this video tonight and something clicks. Not everything, not some magical transformation, but one thing. She needs a cash buffer. She sets up an automatic transfer, $22 a day, into a high-yield savings account. She makes that 10-minute phone call to her credit card company and gets her rate dropped from 24% to 19%. She finds a balance transfer card with 0% for 15 months and moves her $4,200 over. She picks up Saturday shifts at a coffee shop, an extra $600 a month. By December, she's got $3,400 in emergency savings. Her credit card debt is down to $1,100. And when the market recovers after midterms, because it always does, her 401k contributions from the dip months bought shares at a discount. The difference between those two isn't talent. It's not luck. It's not income. It's a series of small, specific decisions made in a window that most people sleep through. 2026 feels off because it is off. The data confirms it. The dominoes are real. But feeling off and falling apart are two very different things, and the distance between them is measured in the decisions you make this month, this week, today. The math doesn't care about your excuses, but it does reward your patience. Drop a comment and tell me, which of these 5 dominoes worries you the most? I read every single one, and if this video changed how you think about your money, share it with someone who needs to hear this. Subscribe, the next one goes even deeper.